Hi there, I'm Kate McClellan, and I've been a professional wedding planner for over 20 years now. I started Planning Collective when I noticed that though most couples are super excited about getting engaged, they quickly feel overwhelmed and intimidated by the actual process of planning their weddings. If left unchecked, this can lead to massive burnout and the urge to scrap all your plans and just elope. While this is totally normal, you don't have to sacrifice your sanity for your dream wedding. In the Wedding Planning Collective podcast, I'm going to share the processes, tips, and tools that all engaged couples like you need to feel confident, supported, and excited about your wedding plans again. Let's get started. Hey there, before we get to the episode, I have a quick question for you. Have you been unsuccessfully trying to shake that feeling that you're forgetting something when it comes to your wedding? You've got the Knot app and you've downloaded countless other planning checklists, but you just can't get rid of that sneaking suspicion that there's something you don't know yet. It's a very common feeling when it comes to wedding planning. So much so that I decided to put together a free resource to help get rid of what I call FOWO, the fear of wedding oversight. Yes, it does include that 12-month task checklist, but that's just the start. In addition to the ultimate wedding planning checklist, my new Don't Forget list also includes a wedding vendor checklist, your shopping list, a packing list for the wedding weekend, and a complete wedding item setup list to make sure that you are truly not forgetting anything when it comes to your wedding. And you heard me right, this list is free for you to grab right now. Just head over to planningcollective.com/forgetting and it's all yours. That's planningcollective.com/FORGETTING, and let's get rid of that FOWO together. All right, let's get on to the episode. Hey guys, Kate here. Welcome back to another episode of the Wedding Planning Collective podcast. In today's episode, I want to talk about some of the signs that you may be about to hire the wrong wedding vendor. Finding your wedding vendors can feel a lot like dating these days. You start your search via apps or social media, start with a few messages back or DMs. There's the excitement when you have the first meeting or a Zoom setup. You get butterflies or that excitement all over again when you get your quote or proposal, you see your design board. But unfortunately, in that process, you might also have that little gut feeling or that slow dawning that maybe this isn't a good fit. And the thing about wedding vendors is once you've booked them, breaking up can be really messy, stressful, and it can cost you a ton of time and money. So today we're going to talk about the top 10 red flags, along with a couple of beige ones, to watch out for while you are booking your vendors so that you can spot trouble before you sign the contract. Red flag number 1 is slow or inconsistent communication right from the start. If it takes them a week or more to answer your initial inquiry, or maybe they ghost you after they've asked a series of questions, it's likely not magically going to get better once you book them, right? Now, don't get me wrong. Vendors often block times where they can respond to emails, and that's usually not going to be over the weekends. During wedding season, it's impossible to keep up with your emails over the weekend as a wedding vendor. So do make sure that you are keeping that in mind. But if trying to communicate with them feels like you're pulling teeth in the early stages of planning while you're just inquiring, imagine what it's going to feel like when you are under a deadline or you have something really important to ask them. Make sure that you're taking this into consideration during the inquiry process, as it likely shows you a little bit about how the tempo of communication is going to continue throughout the planning process. Now, vendors screaming at me as they're listening to this definitely know there are plenty of exceptions, so don't judge too harshly. We've all forgotten to put that out of office reply on before a vacation, had a family emergency that comes up and takes us away from our computer longer than we anticipated. So if you get a genuine apology or a genuine response after a delay, and then the communication improves, this is definitely a beige flag, not a red flag. But if you feel like that is their standard delay in communication, that's what I want you to consider. Red flag number 2 is no contract or a super vague contract. This is probably one of the biggest red flags that I can warn you about. A good contract is going to protect both you, the client, and the vendor as the vendor. So if a vendor says to you, don't worry, we don't need a contract, or this email, text, or DM thread can serve as our contract, run away. That is a big no-no. And if they do send you a contract, but it feels super vague, maybe it's missing deliverables for what they've promised to offer, timelines for those deliverables, either prior to or after the wedding. What's the cancellation process on both sides? If it feels super vague and doesn't include any other details, that can be a big red flag as well. So what can you do instead? Make sure that every promise they make verbally is in writing before you give them a deposit. Now, each vendor is obviously going to be a little bit different about what this includes, but some things you want to make sure are outlined. How many hours does their service include? If we're talking about DJs, photographers, videographers, planners, how long are they going to be there on your wedding day? When do you get the product back? So how long until you get your photos or video back? How many people will they have with them? And what's the contingency plan if that person you're booking with, something comes up and they can't make it? Those are some of the standard things that we want to make sure are covered in each contract. Again, make sure that you're looking at a contract as it's protecting both sides of the party. So it's not just the vendor saying this is all you're getting, you're signing everything away, but make sure that if something comes up, you have something to back you so that you can say this is what was promised. Now, if you're working with a family member or a friend, this is where things can get a little bit tricky. In the end, though, I do highly recommend that you also get something in writing so that you can make sure that everyone is on the same page when it comes to expectations prior to the wedding. Of course, a legally binding contract is going to be best, but sometimes that's not possible when it's a hobby for your family or friends. So at the very least, I want you to have a detailed description of what the service or expectations are. For example, if your friend is going to be a DJ for you, make sure you have something that specifies who's responsible for providing the equipment, setting everything up, who's tearing it down. Don't forget the mic, the speakers, laptops, all of that for every setup. Do you need multiple setups for ceremony, cocktail hour, reception? And how or who will be making the announcements for toasts and things like that. You also want to have a discussion with them about the level of guest that they will be at the wedding. I can see things get really messy, especially when it comes to drinking and family members or friends that are vendors. Now, if this person would be invited to your wedding anyway, and you want them to celebrate as a guest after they're done with their work, definitely hit the bar, have some fun, and celebrate with you guys. I'm not worried about that. But let's say you have an acquaintance that is your DJ. You don't want them to feel like they can hit the bar from the very beginning and then all of a sudden they're sloppy drunk because they felt like they're working for a friend and it's not a normal professional gig. That may or may not be something that you also want to outline in your contract or your detailed overview with your family or friend. As the wedding day gets closer, or even if you're in the middle of it, you don't want to be dealing with awkward situations because the expectations were so different. Red flag number 3 is pushy upselling before you've even booked them. It's one thing for a vendor to explain the options and upgrades. That's normal. That's just going through the process of what they offer. But if you feel that they are pushy and trying to upsell you before you're even committed, this might be a sign that they are more worried about the sale over your service or your actual wedding. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make a sale. This is a business, and so we need to make sure that we're keeping that in mind. But if you feel like the vendor isn't listening and they're just pushing to make that extra commission, that's where you really want to consider whether this is the right vendor for you or not. We've definitely all experienced that pushy salesman in things outside of wedding planning. And unfortunately, there are some salesy people in the wedding industry as well. So just make sure that you are being listened to. And if they're offering these suggestions, it feels like an actual fit for your wedding and not just throwing something in because they want to make that upsell. Red flag number 4 is repeated bad reviews that they can't reasonably explain, or even no reviews at all. Now, everyone gets the occasional not so perfect review. It's simply the nature of running a business. Anywhere, not just in the wedding industry, right? However, if you see a pattern of complaints about similar issues, that's when you really need to pay attention to that. The other thing I recommend is pay attention to the vendor's reply to these negative reviews. If they seem super defensive or they're quick to attack the reviewer themselves, that can be an even bigger red flag. If there is a legit complaint or something went wrong on the wedding day, whether it's truly the vendor's fault or not, their response should be professional and apologetic with a request to resolve the concerns privately, not an attack or blaming others in the public forum. And if they have no reviews anywhere, that doesn't automatically mean that it's a bad thing, but it means you'll need to do a little bit more vetting in different ways, especially if they're brand new to the industry. Request for some references, maybe past clients or other vendors that they've worked with, or ask the vendors that you're currently working with if they've ever worked with them in the past. Red flag number 5, they don't listen to your vision. If you say, we want a moody candlelit vibe, and they keep showing you bright, beachy inspiration photos, they are not listening to you. A vendor should be able to bring your vibe and vision to life and explain how they will adapt it to either your specific venue, budget, or other details. They should not be trying to change your mind to fit something that they're more comfortable with. Now, on the flip side, if as you're looking through vendors' portfolios, if their weddings don't seem to match what you're looking for, that should be a sign for you that there's likely a better fit somewhere else. Red flag number 6, pricing that is too good to be true. If a quote is significantly lower than every other vendor that you've contacted, there is usually a reason, and it is rarely a good one. It could mean experience, cutting corners, lack of equipment, or not accounting for all of the costs that will come back to haunt you later. If it's not obvious upon reviewing their package what the reason is, like they are new to the industry, trying to build up their own portfolio or so forth, feel free to ask them about that pricing difference, because there might be a very logical reason for why they have their pricing as they do. Years ago, I had a conversation with a photographer friend about how I felt she really needed to increase her prices. She was way underpriced from what other photographers at her level and offering were charging. Most vendors in the industry will increase their prices as they gain experience to go with cost of living, but also based on what their value is. This means that they're usually limiting the number of weddings that they're available to book in any calendar year. In the initial stages of growing your business, you take as many weddings as you can to get that experience, right? But that can be so exhausting. So most vendors will take the method of, again, increasing pricing to limit their number of weddings. While I was talking to this photographer friend, she said that she loved having 2 to 3 weddings every weekend. She loved being busy, and she didn't feel like she was struggling to either keep up with the details or the editing for the photos afterwards. Now, she knew if she raised her prices, she might be making the same amount with less weddings, but that wasn't her goal. She wanted to be out there having weddings, multiple weddings every weekend. And I never experienced a delay in either getting the product back from her or the quality of the photos. So I knew that it wasn't impacting her by having this many weddings. Now, if I didn't know her personally and I had seen her pricing, I could have very easily told clients that that price point was a red flag, when really it was just her preferred business model. In the end, if the reviews and the work quality is there to back up their service, a low price point may not be a red flag. However, that does tend to be the exception to the rule. So make sure that you do your research before you snag that deal that feels like it may be too good to be true. Rule number 7, they are flaky in the details early on in the process. If they're canceling or rescheduling meetings multiple times, missing agreed upon deadlines, or forgetting information that you've already discussed, that is likely a preview of what is to come. You should feel like they're organized and on top of things from the start, and that they have existing systems in place to make sure that they are prepared for your wedding day. Red flag number 8, overpromising without proof. If a vendor says, oh yeah, I can do anything you want, but can't show you examples of doing that in the past, be very cautious. There are some companies out there that say that they can do it all. DJs that are also planners, rental companies, photo booths, flowers, etc. In my experience, they are typically subcontracting out many of these roles to make some extra cash, or hiring people in to serve as a day of coordinator or whatever the role is, just to add to their booking. You do not want to be their guinea pig or their first attempt at something complicated on your wedding day. If they are offering services that feel wildly out of what you initially reached out to them for, ask if their team or products, rental products, inventory are theirs, so they're actual employees of theirs, or they own the product, or is this something that they are subcontracting out? If they're coming from another vendor, so they're hiring another team to come in and take care of that, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something that you should decide on your own if that is worth the added charge to have them do it, or if you want to reach out to that company on your own. A perfect example for this is many florists will also offer to help secure your linens, chargers, and some other rentals. Some florists actually own this product, and so they are simply going from their inventory that they own. Others work with rental companies to subcontract it for you. If they're subcontracting, this means that there is going to be a slight upcharge for what you're paying the florist versus what you would pay if you were going directly to that company. I have had clients that will happily pay that added charge if it means that they don't have to have another vendor involved in the process. They know the florist is taking care of the ordering, the accounts, all of that, and they don't have to worry about payments to another vendor. I've had other clients that are happy to do the legwork of that and manage the order on their own because it means they can save a little bit of cash. So again, one way is not right over wrong, but you want to make sure that you're making that decision for what's best for you and your budget. If, as you're asking them these questions, it becomes obvious that they don't have a plan yet. They don't know what vendor they're going to get these products or staffing, who's going to help on that day. That is when you need to really wave that red flag and run. Red flag number 9, bad mouthing other vendors. Now, this one could be subtle, but it can be really telling. If a vendor spends more time talking about how awful other vendors are, whether it's in their category, so like a direct competitor of theirs, or not, it can be a huge red flag. Not only is it super unprofessional, but in the wedding industry, relationships are super important. And you want someone that is going to be a team player with others. If they are truly trying to save you from a wedding nightmare, meaning they've worked with this other vendor and it was an absolute disaster, they will be able to offer either client references or examples or something other than just plain gossip. If you feel that they are simply bashing their competition in order to try and gain your business, that feels a little bit shady. They should be confident enough in their skills to talk about that as opposed to what others are lacking. And red flag number 10, your gut is telling you something is off. The biggest red flag is one that you can't quite put into words. It's that gut feeling that something just isn't right. And I don't just mean that in the negative way, like that's a bad vendor, run away from them. But your instincts might just be telling you that this isn't the right fit. They're a good vendor, they're a good photographer, they look like they do good work, but I don't think they're right for us. Sometimes that's all your gut is trying to tell you. Not that it's a big, crazy red flag, but there are other options that might be a better fit. I often tell my clients one of the hardest things about wedding planning is all of the decisions that you'll have to make. And in just about every case, there's not a clear right or wrong answer. There are multiple right answers. There are multiple photographers that would do an amazing job for you. There are loads of other amazing wedding planners just in my market alone. So I fully acknowledge that there's not always a right or a wrong answer. Sometimes you just need to follow your gut as to which one is the right vendor for you. One final thing for you to really remember. The right vendors will make you feel heard, supported, and confident in your planning decisions. They'll communicate with you clearly and respect your vision, which will ultimately give you peace of mind. And if you spot one of these red flags, just keep on moving. There are plenty of wedding vendors in every market, in every category. You can find someone that feels like a good fit to make your wedding planning experience so much smoother. Now, if this episode has helped save you from making a bad vendor choice, or maybe you have a wild red flag story that you've come across in your own planning, I want to hear all about it over at Planning Collectively. Don't forget that LY, Planning Collectively, over on Instagram. And of course, if you could rate, review, and subscribe, that would be amazing, and it will help make sure you don't miss future episodes. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week.